All right, here we go. Let's hope this doesn't sound like absolute shit. Um, so I thought I'd come on here and show you a little of what I've been working on. This is my homemade, mostly DIY, homemade modular video synthesizer. So currently the output is just coming from the Recur Boy, which is just playing a shader clip. So nothing fancy happening right now. Um, but while we have this output up, I'll give you a quick rundown of what we have here. So here we have a DIY sort of RGB encoder and decoder. So using those VGA to composite and composite to VGA converters, along with some scaling circuits, thanks to the help of some people whose links I'll leave in the description. Um, we have an RGB encoder on this left side. So we can send RGB signals in here and it'll spit those out of composite right here. Um, and then we also have access to our horizontal and vertical sync on the front panel for any other modules that may require front panel sync, like this oscillator here. And then on the decoder side, uh, we can plug in some composite video into this input here, and it will spit out RGB signals corresponding to that video right here. Um, Then we have VCO. This is LGX DIY series, just a simple square wave oscillator with some CV control, and it can be synced to horizontal or vertical sync. Um, this is a homemade oscillator, VCO-ish, um, that I made using a 40106. The same circuit that I was using in the NIVGA01 that I sell on my website. So that can also be synced to horizontal and vertical sync. We have another LZX module, and you'll see this guy's going to do a bit of heavy lifting here today. But it's essentially a frequency doubler. So without getting too into the weeds, you essentially send a signal in here, and you can get uh, up to 8 multiples um, of that signal. So with the two output here, you'll get just double the signal, double the frequency, quadruple, 8 times, 16 times, 32 times, 64 times. Um, so this thing functions as a frequency doubler, but it also is going to be doing heavy lifting in terms of mixing our signals, because this is a sounding amp here as well. Here we have just a simple little DIY module I made that allows me to break out patches to a breadboard for experimenting with new designs and whatnot. Um, so you can, each one of these breadboard pins corresponds to one of these jacks, so that I can just run a jack into here and then easily run, DuPont jumpers out of it into a breadboard. And right now I have these homemade jumpers on them right now, because that allows them to kind of function as a passive mult, which I'll show you. I will demonstrate to you shortly. Then we have the Recur Boy, as made by Cyberboy666 underscores. Um, pretty standard Raspberry Pi video sampler, shader, generator. Just a fun little thing I threw in there for now. And then this is a function generator. Nothing super special about it except that it can go down to 10 millihertz in frequency. So that's nice and slow, and you'll see that'll make for some nice gradual animations. So switch this over to the output. And so right now, obviously we have nothing coming out because we have nothing going in here. But first, why don't we take the output of the recurve boy. So I'm taking the composite output here. I'm going to put it into the composite input of the RGB decoder. We'll take our red output signal and we'll run it into the red channel of our LZX stairs module. And just so that we can quickly have a picture at the gate, let's just take one of these outputs real quick. Take the 64 one, just because more number, more fun. Let's put it in the green input. Just like that, we have a green output. And so basically, in those little spaces where there's particularly more red color, you'll see the frequency is doubling in those spaces, and that's how you get that kind of cool ringing effect. It becomes more prevalent if you add some more colors to the encoder. So let's go out from the 16 port into red. Now we got some red in there. We can adjust our offset values to get a little more red, a little more interesting. That's cool. And so, like I said before, not only is this a frequency doubler module here, but it also acts as a summing amp. So we can take a frequency from one of our oscillators and plug it into another one of the inputs. And that's going to sum that input up to what we already had plugged into the red jack here. Let's just adjust our offsets. So what's happening here right now is that where the oscillator is scrolling, the phase is resetting to 0. So that's why you kind of see just a little, you can just see black space where that oscillator is scrolling. So yeah, it's not super interesting, but what we'll do for now is we'll take out that oscillator, and instead into the green channel, we'll take our blue output from the decoder. And that gets us a little more to work with. And then instead of using the oscillator to sum up just from the RGB inputs, we'll hook that up to the step CV input. And so that's going to actually step through the different frequency values. And because it's controlled, the CV is controlled by a attenuverter, we can get that black phase reset there, or we can invert it and sort of just get like color offsets where the oscillator is scrolling. Increase the scroll rate of that oscillator maybe a little bit, just to make things a little more interesting. Okay, that's kind of cool. While we're at it, why don't we get our blue encoding channel working? So, our blue. So let's put into blue. Just take another one of the outputs from our stairs module. And now that we have all the colors hooked up, we get a bit more play on these offset controls. Cool. All right. Next, let's try out this function generator. So, like I said before, this guy it's particularly useful. It can get down specific to 10 millihertz resolution. So I mean it can be useful for a number of different purposes, making shapes and whatnot. But right now, that super low resolution or super high resolution is particularly useful for me to use it for really slow oscillations for animation. So right now I have it set to zero point 0.2 hertz, aka 200 millihertz. So take the output there. And let's run it into, first we'll run it into our passive mode because I want to take advantage of this signal for a few purposes. But first, we'll take an output and put it into our phase CV input upstairs. Right now, it's going pretty wild just because the offset values are configured so that the CV was kind of going into that black range. So now we kind of moved it into movable range. You can see it's as the oscillator is shifting that phase, it's flying through all those different color spaces. That's pretty cool. Play around with that for a sec. Now you can see, how these low rate oscillations can really slow down and make a more gradual, dynamic, interesting animation. I just slowed it down to 100 millihertz here. We've still got like the fast action happening from this oscillator. It's just like free scrolling. All right, let me grab another long patch cable so that I can show you a little CV control on the recurve boy. So we'll take another output of our makeshift passive mult. We'll run it into one of the CV inputs of the recurve boy. And look at that. Now, as our colors kind of shift with the CV, the animation also moves in and out. We can increase the speed of the animation here just to show you where it can go. Things can get real crazy here once you pick up the animation speed. I like to keep it slow. Let's take it back down to the millihertz range. And still have one more oscillator that we can play with here. I'm actually running out of long patch cables right now. So why don't we take the step CV, move it over to this oscillator. Leave it free running for now. We're actually, looks like it's, this oscillator is sync to vertical sync. So that's why it's got stable stripes right now. Then we can add one more oscillator in here, because why not take advantage of all the ones that we have, right? It's getting real wild now. Get a little more animation from the recurve board. Got one more output on our mold. Some weird things sometimes happen with the CV input on the recurve board. I'm not sure. I'm still working on that aspect. It's like something like resets on each cycle if you don't have the CV offset like dialed in properly on the recurve board, I think. It also makes for an interesting effect, kind of glitchy. And yeah, we get into different color spaces. We shift around these outputs a little bit. So what else can I show you? You flip these inputs around, things can get interesting sometimes. Because these inputs are actually summed up differently. Because they're RGB inputs, so they're weighted differently based on how RGB is weighted in the encoding equation. And so green actually has the most effect on the output. Yeah. I'm not sure how interesting this output is right now. I mean, I didn't really plan a specific patch to show here. But, you know, as always, just showing the possibilities and whatnot. Feel free to let me know if you want to see anything more on this. I definitely plan to keep developing on it. Um, and I'm actually um, working on a module currently um, that is going to replace this guy. Um, and so that'll be available publicly once I get that all together. But it's still in the design phase, I suppose. Um, that's about it, though. Um, yeah, I can just play with this thing for hours. I'm not even gonna lie. So that's just what I'll do, but you can click away from the video whenever you want here. I'll do a vertical sync. This is what the oscillators look like when they're horizontally synced. So you get the vertical bars versus this one's vertically synced. Yeah. All right. I think that'll be it. Thanks, y'all.